There are some who believe a thoroughbred steam engine has a life and a mind of its own. If that's true, then Sir Nigel Gresley is brooding, almost angry. After 4 years locked away in a shed, you can't blame her. She was built for speed. In Gresley's days of glory, the world had nothing to match her, a classic beauty of the track. But Gresley's getting old, and every 10 years she needs a complete overhaul. This one took 4 years and cost £800,000, but by the summer of 2006 it was done. The veteran returned in triumph, back in service on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. "70 years ago, Gresley was built to run fast and free from Edinburgh to London. This is the story of her journey home, back to the main line." In the cathedral city of York, the faithful have gathered at a place of pilgrimage. Gresley is about to make her first mainline journey this century, 200 miles to London. It's a big test, and her crew are just hoping she's up to it.
It's good, it's good. It's a good feeling. I'll be happy when we get to King's Cross.
Britain's railways have changed vastly since the days when Gresley was making this run every day.
Steam on the main line is a lot different ballgame today. Things have changed 100%, in that now you have to have all this electronic gear on it, train protection warning system and OTMR, which is on-train monitoring system, which is equivalent really in a small way to a black box on an aeroplane, but thank goodness it doesn't actually record what you say on the footplate.
Official clearance for the main line has taken 2 long years of paperwork. At last, the pride of the A4 class is ready.
Well, we're hoping for a very good run down to King's Cross, seeing as this is our first public run since 1999. So we're hoping nothing goes wrong and everybody enjoys themselves on the train.
While our European friends play around with shiny, high-speed trains, the British love a whiff of steam. We invented the railways, after all. Aboard today are those who take a keen interest in the journey, and those who don't.
The East Coast Main Line, of course, is what the A4s were built for. These were the crack expresses of the world at that time. And those trains, it took BR over 30 years to equal the times of those trains. So the moment the locomotive goes back on the main line, these memories come pouring back.
I get blue when I hear the wheeze of the choo-choo. I want you to go too with me on the choo-choo.
The Eurostar goes twice as fast, with less than half the style.
Take your places for the first luncheon, please. Pass right forward.
That's Mike, the timekeeper.
The moment's running well. I'm running around 75 mile an hour and making it look easy. So, fingers crossed, no problems. I think locos have characters. Locos are like people, and I think some of the frustration that she's built up by sitting on the North Yorkshire Moors for 12 months longer than she needed to was taken out in that start out of York. It was as if she'd been waiting for it. Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. Yeah, locos can get angry. Locos can have emotions, and this one I think was a little bit annoyed with people.
It's time for a top-up. At Retford, the crew take on fresh supplies from a water tanker.
Well, just over 2,600. Good run, that.
Gresley is sharing the line with newer and faster trains, so she has to stay on schedule.
It's a bit like running a race. You can't win any races if you don't finish. So reliability is key. And yes, it's great that the engine is performing so well, because we've been making up time, we've been winning time everywhere, and that means we're running just those few minutes early, which means everyone else who's trying to operate a train service at the same time as we are has confidence that we are not a problem, and as long as we're not a problem, we can continue to do this.
The A4 engine is a classic design, a blend of Spitfire and Rolls-Royce. Her lines have an appeal that goes straight to the emotions. Today's driver, Ron Smith.
There's nothing, and I don't care what anybody says, and they can all jump on me from a very great height, there's nothing to match an A4 Pacific. The next best is a Flying Scotsman. An A4 was meant to run.
At Peterborough, Gresley has a brief encounter with the fire brigade. They've brought more water for the engine, and Pete Hanson, the fireman, gets a break from shovelling coal.
I reckon I've done about 3, 4 ton already.
Yeah, you going for a sit down now?
No, I'm going for a wash, as you can probably see.
Gresley is getting into her stride. And driver Ron Smith watches the speed rising.
As soon as I get her up to 75, I'll be shutting off and that's it. Did you like that? Gresleys home, eh?
Sir Nigel is home indeed. King's Cross is where she started work 70 years ago. The public loved her then, and they love her now.
Ecstasy. We've got here, the engine appears all right. We won't be able to check it over till the morning because it'd be so late. But that was a marvellous run. Couldn't beat that.
It was terrific. First outing for the Sir Nigel Gresley. I mean, it was fantastic. And dead on time. Couldn't believe it. Absolutely gorgeous.
Very, very good. I came especially from Paris.
Many satisfied customers. Wonderful. If only they'd throw a few pennies over.
Gresley's driver is a modest man, but a very proud one.
She was just like a Formula 1 racing car. It was down to Roger Barker and his team that's put it back together, that's made it how it is now. And I think, without doubt, it's got to be the most remarkable engine on the main line to this day.
Ron's father and grandfather drove Gresley into King's Cross. For Ron himself, this is the first time.
To be sat in the seat of Sir Nigel Gresley, sat in the same seat that my father and grandfather had sat in, and I'd fired as a young fireman. You actually sit in that seat and look down that boiler and to sort of pinch myself and think, you know, I'm very, very privileged to be sat here. It was something that I thought that I would never, ever fulfil. And yet to be sat in that seat on that day and pointing south to King's Cross, but I thought I'd never, ever go into King's Cross with an A4, and it happened. come out of Gasworks Tunnel and King's Cross opens up in front of you. And we were early as well, because if I were going to arrive at King's Cross with Sir Nigel Gresley, I were going to arrive early and not late. And that really put the icing on the cake, really. And that chime whistle echoing once you get under the roof at King's Cross. That chime whistle, it just, well, there's really no there's no words to describe it.
Coming up in part 2, friends reunited for the A4 class. It's a sight never seen in modern times, celebrating a world speed record unbeaten in 70 years. 4 great classics line up together. The National Railway Museum in York, celebrating the age of the train, how we built them, how we use them, and why they're so special.
We're in the business of helping people to understand the story of the railway and why railways are so important in our national culture. And some of that, of course, is about economic history, how the railway affected industry and affected the way we live. But with the steam railway, you can't really understand it unless you've seen one in action.
And to most people, that means the Flying Scotsman, the nation's favourite steam loco. Of all the engines in the museum, this is the one that will run and run.
Flying Scotsman, everybody's very clear. Our attitude to it is that it will be the last steam engine working on Britain's railways. It will be kept going, come what may, as long as it's technically possible to do that. And that means that it has to be changed. It's always been changed and developed and adapted to meet modern safety regulations and signalling requirements and so on. And we go about that with no qualms whatsoever.
But Scotsman is 85 years old now, even older than Sir Nigel Gresley. If she's to be kept running, there's always a job to be done, from the odd breakdown to a full overhaul.
One of the things with Scotsman is that it's been operated for so long. Not an awful lot of the actual nuts and bolts and metal is original as built in 1923. So from a museum curator's perspective, we're not actually in the business of preserving that absolutely original material in the same way as we would be, for example, with the remains of the original rocket. So it's easier on our consciences, if you like, to operate Flying Scotsman than it is a lot of the locomotives in our collection.
Mallard, behind us here, on the other hand, has operated in the museum's ownership. But we're pretty clear that with the other A4s, the other streamliners working on the railway, it's not a unique specimen that people need to see. So we're very guarded about operating it, and there are no plans to operate it again. So there are different approaches for the different locomotives in the fleet.
For 100 years and more, the steam engine was the worldwide king of transport. It had a uniquely powerful mix of beauty, fire and romance. And that appeals to the small boy in all of us.
Seeing a locomotive in action, hearing a locomotive in action, if you can get there, being on the footplate and being assailed from all quarters by the heat and the cold and the wet and the dark and all the rest of it, is just the most incredible experience. And it's certainly worth celebrating, I think, that man can invent such an amazing machine, which at the one level is completely primeval. It seems to have a mind of its own, it's got smells and noises and so on of its own, and appears in some ways to be only just under the control of man. And yet, on the other hand, we need to remember that what it was designed for was to provide a bog standard, straightforward service of regular trains operating to timetables, shifting people about the country so that they could get on with their jobs.
Sir Nigel Gresley is heading back north. To mark her return to the main line, she arrived, on time and in triumph, at King's Cross. Now she's driving hard and fast for home, and a big reunion at the Railway Museum. platform 10 at York, and Gresley is 4.5 minutes early. This place normally deals with the dullness of daily commuting, so Gresley and her crew get a star reception.
Well, a fantastic run. Unbelievable run. Unbelievable.
It's just indescribable, really. The performance of this machine is just phenomenal.
Today's topped it, really, because it's just been unbelievable today. I mean, I've had to hold her back, and I mean, John's here with the owns number 9, you're under South Africa, and we've been on it many times, mate, haven't we?
Oh,
but this engine is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's a total racehorse.
That man knows how to work them.
Yeah.
That man knows how to work them. That's the good thing about it. I would let him go at the end of the earth with my engine, and that's saying something. Wouldn't let many people do that. But this man, even though he is an Englishman.
Even an Englishman can get emotional now and again. This engine is part of Ron Smith's family.
Well, my father and grandfather have driven this engine on the main line, you know, East Coast many, many times. And for me to be able to do it today over the same railway, well, what can I say? Unbelievable. I just wish they were there to see it, but they are, you know. It's been there in memory. It's been put in my memory, you know.
Gresley was one of a fleet of 35 express engines. Today at the Railway Museum, the last 4 in Britain line up, together for the first time, and Gresley takes her place.
Gresley is one of the iconic locomotives that's still running on British rail metals. And I think that's one of the most remarkable things of all, is the fact that these locomotives, built in the 1930s, are still putting in the same kind of performances that they did all those years ago. They're owned by individuals now, restored by experts, and I think that it's testimony to all those people, all that energy, that these engines are still doing the job they were designed for all those years later. It's a miracle. It really is a miracle, really.
I believe in miracles.
There never was and never will be a steam engine faster than these. And no one loved them more than the men on the footplate. When they get together, they talk about steam.
Hello, Sir Nigel.
How are you doing?
We've heard on the grapevine that you're doing 70 at top of Stoke. 70.
Yeah, 70. Speedo said 72, but they said 70.
What did you have behind it, though?
13 on.
Oh, good lord.
13.
Yeah, it was
that's some weight.
Yeah, it was some weight.
There are a large number of difficulties about running steam on the main line these days. But I think the fact that there's still a general will to overcome them is testimony to the power that steam still has. For me, it's the railway's most important marketing tool. I mean, it's an object of great beauty, it's an object of glamour. And I think that, without them, the railways would be a much duller place. It's a hark back to an age when we celebrated what we had rather than moaned about it.
Well, just to see them and the smell of them. It may sound funny to an outsider, but they had their own smell, and all the old local men, they could stand there, breathe in, and they could smell it. It's a beautiful smell.
Well, when I saw them all lined up in the finger four position, it was wonderful. Tremendous to see them all together again. Bittern, South Africa, Nigel Gresley, Mallard, beautiful, superb. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, Gresley, the best.
I look at them now. I've been finished 24 years, and I think I'd love to be up there driving that one, or even doing a little bit of firing at it.
Stay as sweet as you are. Don't let a thing ever change you.
Has it been worth it? With all the heartache, all the problems that you get, it has definitely been worth it. I was extremely nervous about doing it again. We've been involved with it so long, but we hadn't been out on the main line for about 7 years, 4 years of the overhaul and a couple of years running here. And I was a little frightened of the whole situation, but because there's a lot to do and you've got to keep the paperwork right. But it came right, and at the end of it, it was just, well, it was a pleasure. it all fell into place, and that gives you such a sense of achievement at the end of the day that it couldn't have gone better. And in fact, all the trips we've done couldn't have gone better. Up to now, we've actually done 5. And long may it continue, but it's fact of life. You're only as good as the last job you did. So let's hope it continues in that vein. At the end of the day, you've done a job. We hope we've made a few quid, and you take it off to the shed and put it to bed and get it ready for the next one.